Welcome to Thinking is Contagious. The voter fraud issue continues moving forward, and it's getting harder and harder for the mainstream media and the left to keep it under wraps, to suppress it. Georgia, although they certified their vote, they announced yesterday an investigation into election fraud. The Georgia Secretary of State, he announced 250 investigations into quote-unquote credible claims of fraud connected to the 2020 election. So you wonder how you can certify on one hand the vote and then say you've got 250 investigations going on as far as the voter fraud. Anything from dead people voting to people voting twice to absentee ballots, far outnumbering absentee ballot envelopes. There's a lot going on, and it's getting harder and harder not to report on it. And there's something here. There is definitely something here, and we are going to get to the bottom. We're going to get to the bottom of it, one way or the other. I think it's interesting how I heard Jonathan Turley, who's a constitutional attorney and a Democrat, okay, basically saying that what is going on is an attempt to actively subvert democracy, is what's going on. An attempt to subvert democracy. And I think that is exactly what you're seeing here. I think you saw this before. I think you saw this in 2008, like I've said before, with Obama. It explains a lot to me how he got elected. I think in 2016, they drank the Kool-Aid, the left, and thought Hillary was so far ahead. They thought Trump was such a non-factor that I think that what happened was they really didn't feel they needed to put the system in place to rig the election, because they thought it was going to be a Hillary landslide. And I think that's why you saw such anger on the part of the Democrats after they lost. And obviously for the last 4 years, this hell-bent hatred, because they're mad at themselves, is what they are. They're mad at themselves because they were overconfident that they were going to win, and they didn't flip the cheat, fraud switch. That's what happened. And that's why you saw that rage that's not anything normal after losing an election. It's total rage that we've experienced for the last 4 years. It's been total violence and rage and chaos and attacks on the streets because they're mad at themselves. They had the instrument, they could have flipped the switch, and they didn't do it because they were overconfident. The efforts that attorney Jonathan Turley was talking about to subvert democracy are very apparent, especially in Georgia right now. We've got to be very careful. You saw LeBron James now saying that he's sending his troops in to Georgia. You have seen Andrew Yang, and you talk about illegal, and this is illegal. Andrew Yang on his website actually saying for people to move to Georgia so that they can vote, set up their homes in Georgia so they could vote in the election, which is not legal. and this was a Democratic presidential candidate that we're talking about. And Abrams, the same way, all the celebrities, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being pumped into those two runoffs. And we are seeing a really concerted effort to try to win those two runoffs. Both sides going above and beyond the call of what would normally happen in these types of Senate elections, but with very good reason to do so, especially if you believe in democracy and especially if you want to make sure that we safeguard against the atrocities that have been perpetrated on this country with this election cycle. I want to talk a little bit about Matt Gaetz, state representative, and he made a statement which I think proves that we may be in for unprecedented decision about electoral votes in these contested states and the acceptance of the same. Gaetz says, I talked to representatives in both the House and the Senate, and there is an interest in examining voting irregularities and forcing a debate in Congress about whether or not to accept state electors where those irregularities exist. This is huge. It's gaining momentum. There is evidence. The whistleblower that was speaking yesterday on various news outlets, not a Trump voter, not a Biden voter, evidently voted independent, but said he had to come forward. He had to disclose what he knew. And more people are coming forward and disclosing what they knew. We're talking about millions of votes here. Millions of votes. The Hill reports that in New York County, they found 55 uncounted early votes. And you say, oh, 55, it's not a big deal. Well, in New York County, the congressional race, one of the congressional races in New York County, the vote difference was 12. 55 uncounted votes. How do you have uncounted votes at this point? How do you have the questions that we have in this country at this point? You know, Brazil had an election not too long ago. It took them 2 days to tally and certify all the votes. 2 days. We're the United States of America. It's not that we can't do it. It's that the corruption, the cover-up, mandates this becoming convoluted. Just like you heard the retired Colonel Phil Waldron say that the vote dump, the famous vote dump that he found in Pennsylvania, where 570,000 votes came in for Biden with 3,000 for Trump, all in the same batch. It's impossible. It's impossible. That's why these delays, that's why the stops in the counting were necessitated. because of the fraud. If this was straightforward and clean, just think, people, if this was straightforward and clean, Brazil did it in 2 days. Why are we taking weeks? Why can we not get this straight? Why are we finding votes? Why are votes being accepted at a rate that has never happened before? In 2016, there was 266,000 mail-in votes in Pennsylvania. And approximately 1% of those mail-ins were rejected. In 2020, there was 2.6 million mail-in votes in Pennsylvania. And the rejection rate was 0.03. 0.038 to be exact. The acceptance rate of votes, mail-in votes in Pennsylvania between 2016 and 2020 increased 27-fold. 27 times. How do you explain that? Fraud. There is a litany of affidavits, statements, whistleblowers, testimony, eyewitness accounts, people who expose themselves to perjury charges. There are hundreds of them that have come forward with first-hand knowledge of what occurred. If that's not the case, why is there this hell-bent mandate to expedite the certifications where you've had to get courts involved to hold off certifications? In 2016, Trump's certifications went well into December 14th or December 12th, whatever the outside date was. Here, the mandate was get everything certified before Thanksgiving. They were clamoring for this. Why? Because of fraud. We've been set up, people. And as I've always said, those who hate this country, the socialists, the communists, the far left, nothing is unacceptable collateral damage. Anything is acceptable collateral damage. They don't care the harm that they do to this country, to its people, to its economy, to its health and well-being, to its safety, to its legacy and history. They don't care. What they do want is to destroy it. So they welcome the ability to tarnish the democratic process. And that's what they're doing here. And they have brainwashed a huge segment of this population who blindly follow like sheep just because they've been promised. The carrot is dangled out in front of them on a stick. You're not going to have to pay for school. You're not going to owe the money that you owe for school. We're going to wipe that out. You're not going to have to pay for your medical coverage. You're not going to pay taxes. The bad rich guys, the wealthy guys, they're going to pay for you. They're going to subsidize you. Your inability to become wealthy and rich has nothing to do with supply, demand, and what you bring to the table. Your skill set, your levels of your acumen in your field has nothing to do with that. The reason that you can't be wealthy is because people have cheated you. The reason the wealthy are wealthy is because they've cheated to get there. That's what they're saying. What they're trying to do is say, instead of like in the old days in this country, in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, where you looked at a successful person and you wanted to emulate them, to achieve what they achieved. They motivated you. What's happened in this country now is the path of least resistance. Drag them down. Bring them down to the level. Because they didn't make it legally. They cheated to get there. That's what they're telling you. And it's far easier, far more comfortable, far less cumbersome. Doesn't take effort to say, you know what? Yes, I'm satisfied to get by. And I will accept the handout. And I will accept the fish every day. And let's go after the guys who go out and fish every day. And make them give us the fish. And make them provide us guaranteed fish forever. And keep them working to get us our fish. That's what this is about, and that's what is happening here, right now. And we need to stop it. And it can be stopped. And it can be stopped, but we need to stop it. The efforts of this incredible legal team that Trump has put together are beginning to put a dent in the armor of the left, and they are afraid. They are running scared, and they are afraid. And this will be history making, what is happening here. At the very minimum, it's going to ensure future elections not to be held this way and to be bulletproof. That's at the very least. But little by little and day by day and minute by minute, I'm beginning to realize I've gone from a point of saying there's no shot here. Where's the proof? To the point of saying there's a lot of evidence here. And there is a shot. There is a shot of Trump remaining president in 2020. And it's increasing by the day and by the moment. And I think the left knows this. The liberals know this. And they are panicking. They are shaking in their pants. You don't even see today on any of the search engines anything about the testimony garnered yesterday. The first-hand evidence. You don't see anything about the affidavits, the statements, the first-hand accounts by witnesses. You don't see any of that. What do you see? An investigation into Trump pardons, pay for pardons. You see that headline, but you don't read that it says, the Department of Justice says, but there's no officials, government officials, that are subject to that investigation. They just say there's an investigation into the pardons for money. You do see a headline this morning about Ivanka Trump having to testify about misuse of funds, campaign funds. That headline is there. But you don't see any headline about the fraud that, in my opinion, has undoubtedly been perpetrated on this country. There is voter fraud. There is evidence that requires it be investigated. At the very minimum, that it be investigated. And that no electoral votes are accepted in any of these swing contested states with these questions. We have a serious issue here. And if this is dealt with properly, you will see the peaceful, passive considerate left, the peaceful left, show how they conduct themselves always when they don't get their way. Chaos, violence, infringement on your freedoms and liberties and ability to express yourself. It will get ugly. It will get ugly if justice is doled out the way it's supposed to be. And what we have here is a situation of a president that's not a politician. If this had occurred to any other president, they would have not put up this kind of fight because they're part of the system. They are part of the swamp. And they understand that the swamp can take them down. The advantage we have here is that we have in Donald Trump a person that has never lived in the swamp, has no loyalty to the swamp creatures, and is willing to fight the swamp. And that's why for 4 years you have seen this hell-bent effort to destroy him. And it's not just been from the left. It's not just been the Democrats. There's plenty of rhinos out there that have undercut him. Chris Christie as a prime example. Chris Christie, Mitt Romney, prime examples. The system is corrupt. It protects itself, it feeds upon itself, and at the end of the day, it is funded by us, the taxpayers, and we are paying money into a system that has no interest in defending our rights, our liberties, our freedoms. We are paying people to serve themselves. Self-serving government officials that have never earned, many have never earned a penny outside of the taxpayer dollar, or from writing books, memoirs, speaking engagements, all garnered by their career living off the taxpayer dollar. It used to be, back in the days, the founding fathers, through the 20th century, that most people who were in politics made it, were successful businessmen and women, and then went in to give back. Today, you've got the AOCs of the world who have lived off of nothing. Marco Rubio's of the world have lived off the taxpayer dollars. They've never reached anything outside of the taxpayer funded dollars that they receive. So this is where we're at. It is getting interesting, and it's only going to get more interesting. Stay safe, keep up, don't believe the mainstream media. There is huge evidence. Go look for it. Thank you.